Okay, in this video we're going to discuss withdrawing money from your retirement account and also transition into bonds. You'll hear talk about as you're moving along through life, you need to transition into things that are a lot safer. We'll have a little bit of a philosophical discussion on that. I will tell you every financial advisor will tell you to start transitioning into something safer as you get closer to retirement. I'm going to make an argument for something that is just a different way to think about things with that. So let's talk about this now. I think this part of the spreadsheet should look really familiar. You've got the year that all these things are taking place, the age at which they're taking place, this person's salary that we're raising by 2.5% per year, the savings, which is the amount of money that they're saving based on their savings rate up here, and then return on investment based on their ROI rate, the balance of money that they put in, and then we've added a column for withdrawals. So what are withdrawals? Withdrawals are going to be 4% of the balance, and we're going to start taking them out at the end of the year where they turn 66. Okay, it's going to be a little bit of a bank shot here, but what we're going to do is say that as the year that they turn 66 is ending, they're going to make a withdrawal of 4% of this balance, and that the next year will be accounting for the withdrawal here. So what we're going to do is say that this is equal to their balance times, I think I have withdrawal rate up here with my constants at the top of the spreadsheet, withdrawal rate of 4%. Okay, and the number is so large, it can't be expressed as a number comprehended by humans. Okay, copy it down. These numbers, again, are not inflation adjusted. Now, one thing that I would like you to notice, when we did a comparison before, we compared the inflation adjusted number to the non-inflation adjusted salary. Here, if they work this plan, then at the end of the year where they are 66 years old, they can retire, and their retirement money is actually greater than the amount of money that they were making by working. So just another example of why it pays to do this. Okay, if we're starting to withdraw this, let's go ahead and make the presumption that we are choosing no longer to work. I don't know, maybe some people just love work so much. They're really not the people that I'm talking to today. So I'm going to delete their income here, which means that they're not putting money back in. All right, now the other thing is that we need to account for this when we calculate their balance, right? So what I need to do is have everything that we've got there, D53, and then minus this guy. So I think that's everything. Let me just double check by looking at what's involved here. We've got the ROI, previous balance, that's savings, ROI, and yep, and withdrawals. All right, so we just keep on trucking. Now, we'll have you notice something. We've got a 10% rate of return and only a 4% rate of withdrawal. Every year that this person continues to go through retirement, the amount that they can take out starts going up. All right, this is called a perpetuity with growth. This money, based on this model, will last forever. Okay, is that really true? Maybe it is. Actually, maybe it is. This is how wealthy families just get wealthier and wealthier. One thing that we definitely know is not true is that when this person turns 70, the IRS is going to jump in. It's going to start making them take required minimum distributions out of their retirement account. So let's go over here and take a look. This is basically expected life. And so what we're doing here is they're saying that that this person, when they're 70, is probably going to live 27.4 years, and they need to start taking out the money as though they're going to. All right, so what does that equate to in percentage terms? Like 3.6%. Not really a big deal until you get to where it exceeds 4%. So when they're 73 years old, they're no longer going to be allowed to withdraw 4%. They're going to have to withdraw 4.049, 4.2%, 4.3%, 4.5%. Just something to keep in mind if you so happen to be elderly and you've just got so much money that you actually don't want to take as much out as the IRS wants you to take out. But these numbers start getting bigger. And the reason is you've gone your whole life without paying taxes on this money. The IRS would like you to pay taxes, and it's going to make you start paying some taxes on it. So let's put this into percent terms, and then let's add a couple couple of decimal points to it. So you can see, like, when you turn 88, they're going to make you take out almost 8% of it, and so on. If you're 100 years old and you still have money in here, they're going to make you take out a big old chunk of it. They'll make you take out 16%. They're very optimistic. If you get to be 100, the IRS thinks you might live another 6 years or so. But again, once you turn 70, take a look at your required minimum distributions. They may not match up to what you want to do in your retirement account. All right, so we've got this person, and they've retired with actually more money than they ever had before, and we haven't even factored in that they're going to start getting Social Security checks at this point. So this is a person who, in retirement, is actually going to have an income far greater than what they had when they were working. So, what do you do about that? What's the implication? The implication is that they probably shouldn't have waited until this point to retire. They shouldn't have waited until they were 67. They, maybe should have started thinking about it when they were 62. Something like that. Basically, the rule of thumb is once you've saved up 25 times what you need to spend in a year, then you can afford to retire. So the 25 times rule translates to 4%, which is what we're withdrawing here. Now, the transition into bonds. Everybody will tell you that as you get older, you need to transition into bonds. Every financial planner, this is universal, which should probably give you a clue as to how you should view this bit of advice. I'm going to say that this may or may not be true, and a lot of it depends on how much money you've got. Right? So if you barely have enough money to retire, your tolerance for risk is zero, because if anything happens bad and reduces your income, then you'll no longer have sufficient income for your retirement. Now, if you've got, like this person does, funds that are way in excess of what you need to retire, I mean, this person, if you throw in their Social Security, is going to be making over $200,000 a year, right? Now, this isn't adjusted for inflation yet. But, $200,000 a year, I mean, if they live modestly, then they can withstand some pretty big shocks in the stock market and come out doing okay. So what kind of shocks can you expect? Well, this is, you can go on the internet and download the historical S&P 500 performance, and you'll notice that these numbers look nothing like a smooth 10% per year run. That 10% per year is like an annualized rate of return that just presumes a smooth ride. The ride is not at all smooth. The ride is very bumpy. So I got out of the Army in 1987, so the first year I could have saved something. Well, the stock market was kicking along really well, 16.1%, and then had a year where it made over 30%, and another one here with over 30%. I remember this year, it was over 20%, and I just thought, holy cow, I have really got to put some money into the stock market. But the year prior to that was almost 40%. So you have these giant run-ups. Well, what happens after years of the stock market making insane returns? Well, it makes some not so insane returns then. So it lost 11% and 22% and 9%. I mean, you had 3 straight years where the stock market lost money. And then, it bounced back a little bit. So, it got back most of what it lost over the 3 years after that. Okay, this year here, 2008, lost almost 40%. That was a huge, horrible shock. It was the worst of my lifetime, and the news was saying that it was the worst thing that had happened in the markets in the previous 80 years. Well, but then look what happened over the years following that. It got back the 37% loss, and now you'll notice that this is not exactly the same, and I'll show you why. But it got back a lot of the money over the next few years, so it took a while. You can't just add up these positives. The negatives are worse than the positives, and let me give an example. Let's say that starting in 2007 you had $100,000. Okay, we've got $100,000 here, and then we multiply this times the loss. So you had $63,000 the next year. Okay, here's the problem now. This 26% is not 26% of $100,000, it's 26% of $63,000. So now we got this 26% return. It didn't get us back. All right, and then we got this 15% return, and even that didn't get us back. And the 2.1% definitely didn't get us back. So we didn't get back until 2012. Right? So that's the difficulty here, is that if you lose a big chunk of money, even if the market rebounds, it could take a long time before your money's restored. And if you need to withdraw big chunks of your retirement savings account in order to survive, then you're making this number even smaller, so that as you get these positive returns, the positive returns don't return as much money to you. So that's the basic point I'm trying to get at here, is that if you can withstand a shock like this, and this one was as bad as it gets, but if you can withstand shocks like this, then your tolerance for risk is greater. You can leave more money in stocks. If you can't survive a 37% drop in the stock market, then you should not be in the stock market if you're retired. Remember, in retirement, you can't make up for bumps in the road with earnings. You're not earning any money anymore, at least in theory you're not. You don't want to be that unfortunate person who has to work a minimum wage job somewhere, and you're elderly and you'd really rather kind of be home playing with your great grandkids or whatnot. So required minimum distributions, again, age 73, I think we said, is where they start to become an issue for us. So RMDs, so now here, I don't know, maybe when you turn 73, let's just, for the sake of simplicity in the model, we'll bump it up to 5%. I don't know, until you turn 78, whatever. So 73, so then we're going to go ahead and say that it's times 0.05. All right, so you can see this person still has a perpetuity with growth. Until our withdrawal rate equals 10%, at least in the model, then we're going to always have a perpetuity with growth. So, okay, so that is basically the gist of it. This person stays rich forever and actually continues to make tons of money. Now, what about our inflation adjustment? So I'm going to put an inflation adjustment factor here so that we take everything back to $2016. And the inflation adjustment factor in year one is just 1. Okay, and so on. Bring it all the way down here. So, it didn't like it because I didn't use an absolute cell address. There we go. That's better. All right, so then let's go ahead and divide. Well, let's do inflation adjusted balance. And inflation adjusted withdrawals. All right, so we'll take the balance, divide by the rate of inflation, and our withdrawals, divided by our rate of inflation, or our inflation adjusted balance. Okay, and let's run this thing all the way down. Okay, and holy cow, that is just completely unreadable. Okay, so at age 67, when this person's talking about retirement, whatever, they are going to make, they're going to have $1.8 million, and the 4% withdrawal gives them $72,000. Throw in Social Security, this person's retiring with a 6-figure retirement. Now, also the other thing, for just out of curiosity, what's the inflation adjusted wages? And this person, you'll see, made pretty modest increases in their wages. I can run it all the way down, doesn't matter. So he kind of started at $45,000. Really, when you adjust for inflation, after all that time, again, this is just a very conservative model. They ended up making almost $56,000. So that's it for this one. We've accounted for withdrawals, made you aware of required minimum distributions. You can go to the irs.gov website, and it'll tell you what these required minimum distributions are. You can do a Google search for historical S&P 500 returns. Now, the other thing you can do to make this thing really robust is, if you want, you can set yourself here at retirement and then start putting it through some various time scenarios here, like compare it to actual historical data. It doesn't mean that things will be like this in the future, but you can compare it to real world data and then see if your money still lasts, even if you get hit by the worst shock in forever or whatnot. And so what I used to do was try and find periods of time that had the most negative numbers in them. Like, like this guy here, like if we took this as a 10-year time window and just compared it to this, how long is my retirement going to last if, I'm the unlucky guy that retires in the year 2000, and then instead of these great years here, the cycle just kept repeating. So you can just compare this against nightmare scenarios and then see how your retirement lasts. I mean, we'd like to hope that you're not going to retire and then constantly repeat the 10 worst years in the past 80 or whatever, but you can do that to sort of stress test your retirement plan, make sure that your money is going to last you a long time. And realistically, we do have a safety net. We've got Social Security, so with any luck, that'll still exist in some form in the future. And no matter what, we'll be able to collect that. So that's it for this video.